Hi, I'm Yolanda and this is Speak On. Today we're talking about breakups. Hearts don't break evenly, and whether you're getting divorced, you've split amicably, or like me, your long-term relationship with the person you live with was ended via WhatsApp because they were cheating on you, it can be pretty painful. Now there was a point where I wouldn't have said that out loud. It took me ages to even tell everyone my relationship was over because I felt a mixture of shame and embarrassment alongside the hurt and pain. Now, because time is a healer, I can talk about it openly. I can be healed and still say that I didn't like what happened. I don't like my ex or how he treated me. It was cruel, it was mean, but I don't want him back. I no longer love him and I'm over him. I can acknowledge that all of these things can be true at once. Breakups are hard, and the process of getting to that point where I can talk frankly about it, it really took a while. For a few reasons. One, because it was during a time of mass bereavement. And two, because I was in it for the long haul and I had to digest grief, heartbreak, and the loss of my perceived future. Alongside the emotional toll of relationships, did you know there was a chemical process behind heartbreak? Being in love elevates dopamine and oxytocin levels, which are feel-good hormones. So when love is taken away, the withdrawal from it can be damaging, disruptive, and devastating. Whether you're in the first throes of pain or you're over it, but still smart when milestones come around, or you find out things about your ex that make you reflect on your relationship and feel sadness, hopefully we can help you. How do you get over it? How do you get past it? That's what I'm going to discuss today with Eleanor. Eleanor Wood is an author. She wrote the memoir Staunch, and it's a memoir about love, loss, and bereavement. Welcome, Eleanor. How are you?
Really well, thank you. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks so much for joining me. So, can you summarise what Staunch is about?
Well, it's really interesting you talking about your experiences, because it came from a very similar thing, that I'd had a really hard time. I'd been through a period of having a terrible breakup, then some really bad rebound relationships, some family bereavement and mental health issues. And it was only when I sort of came out of the other side of it that I thought, wow, a lot happened that at the time I did not want to talk about. And so I really thought that if we can talk about these things a bit more honestly, then hopefully it would just really help, because I felt like it's that sort of thing of writing the book that you need, that there was nothing out there that was really about how embarrassing and messy these things can be, as well as the sort of romantic heartbreak. Yeah. And then I also wanted to include some of the stuff that really helped me. And the main thing for that was sort of getting some perspective on things, that as well as having a lot of therapy and a lot of self-reflection, I spent a lot of time with the older women in my family who had an awful lot of wisdom. And it turned out I didn't even realise had all been through the same and worse at some point. And I learned about all these sort of secret relationships that they'd had before they were married and that sort of thing, and that now they look back very objectively, and that really, really helped me when I was in the middle of it.
Definitely. I think one of the things I love that you said there was that kind of writing the book that you need when you're going through those things. It's so difficult, and you can feel there are lots of people having, obviously we know, or any of our friends from our friendship groups, our peer groups, they've, pretty much everyone's gone through heartbreak or something. But both of us were in really long-term relationships where we didn't get married. Did you feel like you didn't get the same support that you would have got if you were getting divorced?
Massively. That was a thing that really annoyed me, actually. Yeah. And it made me wish there was a different language for it, because it made me think, like, the first time that I said, oh, I've broken up with my boyfriend, I think I was like 15 and we'd spent a couple of months holding hands in the cinema. And now I'd had this 12-year relationship with someone that I was, we were really involved with each other's families. We owned a place together. It was like, there was so much to deal with. And the only language for that is me and my boyfriend are breaking up, which just sounds, it could be teenage.
Doesn't it? And then when you say it to people, they're kind of like, oh, okay, you'll be fine, you'll get over it, it'll be great, you'll be better, blah, blah. But when I heard friends say, oh, they're getting divorced, everybody's like, oh my goodness. And it's like, well, I don't know, how do you say it? I've lost my life partner? Would that be an easier way to say it? Would you understand the gravity of it then?
Yeah, that has a bit more weight, doesn't it? But it made me almost really wish that I'd got married so that I could say that I was getting divorced.
In retrospect, so people would take it seriously.
I'm so glad I didn't. But
Same, yeah.
at the time, yeah, definitely. It feels like there's a gap, and it felt really unfair.
Right, I think maybe we need to invent a new term, don't we?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like there needs to be something between, like, I don't really like partner that much.
No.
But yeah.
We'll think of something. I'm sure either by either by the end of the podcast or another time we'll think of something. We'll come back. We'll circle back around to that. But yeah, there definitely needs to be something that kind of reflects that, because it is such a big thing in our lives. You know, we're both as well in our late 30s when that happened, which has a whole other fun section of things to deal with that you then talk through with your therapist at length.
Oh yeah. Then you get just the really nice feeling completely out of step with the world. Doing the opposite of what everyone else is doing at that life stage, the opposite of what you feel you're meant to do. Yeah, it's horrible. Yeah,
opposite from what you plan to do. And one of the reasons that we're like, you know, over the next few months on Speak On, this whole part of the series is talking about love, sex and relationships and what that looks like to different people, because there are so many different experiences that we're all having. At the time that my relationship ended, I'd had, I think maybe like, I had 9 bereavements altogether over like 2 years, and that was, I think, number 3. I think I was at that point. So let's fair to say I was already not in an amazing place when it happened. And I definitely think that it took a little while, but there was a point where I got to rock bottom after, I think it was after like, I think there were 3 more bereavements, and then I found out that I'd been cheated on, and then it was just like a proper nosedive to the bottom, as it were. What was your rock bottom, and what did that kind of look like and feel like?
Well, I think for me it was sort of similar in a way, that it was almost like a perfect storm of so many things happening all at once. It was a real pile up of things. But I think for me, I just didn't deal with any of them at the time. So that actually came a little bit later, that I spent a long time. And I think a lot of it is because of what you mentioned earlier, that sort of feeling embarrassed and a bit of a sense of failure.
Yes.
That I was very, very keen to be like, yeah, this is my choice. I'm doing the right thing. Everything's going to be great. I'm so happy that I'm independent. Yeah. And I wasn't. I was so sad and miserable, but I just refused to confront it. So I ended up going straight from a 12-year relationship into a rebound relationship, which I couldn't even see at the time wasn't a good idea. Then into lots of dating. And it was only it was this whirlwind that I didn't let it stop, because I think I didn't want to think about the loss and all the things that had happened. So it's actually, I think, probably a couple of years after the initial big breakup that I really did hit rock bottom and just,
And then what was I suppose when you get to that point, what was the catalyst for you to say, okay, this is what's happening. Like, I'm acknowledging that I'm not enjoying this. What was that? I don't know. What was that kind of, what did that look like? Did you stop and have a word with yourself, or did you wake up one day and just feel, okay, I've got to get this sorted out, or was it a gradual process?
I think it was just like this sort of escalating feeling of loneliness that I felt so out of step with other people my age. I didn't even want to admit to my family that I wasn't doing okay. And I sort of reached this point where I thought, I can't carry on pretending I'm fine. And so almost like deciding to say, like, I'm really sad and I feel terrible about this, and I feel embarrassed about how terrible I feel, and everything is going really badly for me at the moment, was actually this wonderful, empowering thing. Because when I wrote the book, I wanted to make it really embarrassing in a way. And like, I had this rule with myself that I would not try to make myself sound cooler than I was, because that's always really the sort of temptation, I think. That after ages of like, being like, oh, I'm so glad that I'm out of that relationship. Oh, you know, I'm on my own. I'm a feminist. And, you know, all of those things were true. But then it was also like, actually, I'm not feeling great. Life's really hard. And I think also like, I had this sort of romanticized vision of what heartbreak looked like. And it's maybe like smoking a cigarette in Paris in a rainy street, like wearing a lot of black, and maybe like, and it's like, actually, like, you know, that's not what it looks like. It was mostly just like me in some grotty pants, eating pasta out of a mixing bowl, crying in bed, and like kind of just confronting all of those like embarrassing, gross, messy things. It's made me feel great.
Yeah. I think so many people I know are going to relate to this, because I think one of the things, you know, you mentioned there was talking about when you coming to terms with things that were happening. And I don't know about you, but there was definitely a point where I felt like there was definitely a point where absolutely I was so upset when my relationship ended. And that I went through, you know, the several stages of grief. You don't go through them even though there are some people that don't kind of believe in that process, but you go through elements of that at different times. And sometimes more than once, you're just cycling around all these different things. And I remember one of the things I think that I found quite, I don't know, that made it difficult for me to get my head around it, was people almost kind of encouraging me to dismiss it and get over it, as opposed to confront it and say it out loud. It's almost like say its name, say what it is, and then you can face it and then kind of past it. You know, it's almost like you have to say the demon's name in order to slay it, kind of thing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But another thing that really got me was this obsession with getting over it.
Yes.
And I think like moving on and being comfortable with yourself and your situation is really important. But that doesn't mean you have to get over it. I think there are some things that have happened to me in my life I will never get over. I hate that language, but that has to be the aim. It's like, you're going to be different at the end of something like this. That's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Things happen and they change you. And you know, the timing of this is really good and relevant, because genuinely I had a conversation not that long ago, and I was just saying, I just acknowledge I'm really, really open about everything that I'm thinking and feeling. I'm just very truthful about it. I'm truthful about what happened to me in grief and everything else, because I felt like no one else was being truthful. So therefore I couldn't learn or get over things or be helped necessarily, because all the language is too coded and too kind of based on this either getting over it or repressing and pushing things down. And so I was like, that relationship, it started off great, and then it was terrible, and then it was emotionally abusive, and then it was really kind of horrible, and then it ended really poorly. And I didn't like the way it was dismissed as though it meant nothing to him when it meant everything to me. And I can acknowledge that. And they were like, I hope one day you get over it. And I was like, oh no, I'm over it. I don't want to be with him. I'm sure he's a different person now to whoever he's like, to the person that he's with. But to me, he was terrible. I don't want to be with someone that treats me poorly again. But I feel like I should be able to acknowledge the thing that happened to my life without people thinking or trying to jump to get over it. It's because, like you said, that language isn't helpful. You don't need to get over things that have happened to you. You just have to acknowledge them, don't you?
Yeah. And I think even acknowledging that the relationship wasn't great, even though you were heartbroken and grief-stricken, like, as you said, all of those things can exist at once. And I think that was a big thing for me as well, that I think when you're in a long-term relationship, you always have this sort of tendency to be like, everything's fine to the outside. And so, you know, for the longest time, I thought that I had a really, really good relationship.
Same.
But actually, I just needed to do a lot of work on myself. And someone just not breaking up with you for a long time doesn't mean it's a great, wonderful relationship. It took me a long time to realise that.
Absolutely, because we all stay in, you know, I think there are times when we all stay in situations longer than we need to, because we are reckoning with something in our heads and we're working something out. And I remember actually at the time when my nan got ill before she passed away, me and another one of my sisters, her relationship ended around the same time that mine did. Both of us were in these relationships that we actually were planning to get out of, and we'd had these like really frank conversations with our dad, and we were pretty much poised to like cut and run. But then our nan got sick and it delayed it by an entire year. So by that point, we'd kind of fell right back into our relationship roles, and then very, very consumed with everything that was happening with our family. So then it was weird. It was like, then we were both, I was blindsided, but at the same time, I was like, I wanted to do this a year ago. But then I was like, I didn't like it happening to me. But again, I acknowledged that. It took me a while to acknowledge I'd stayed longer than I needed to. And then so did he. And so it was, I think there's lots of, I wish I'd heard more of that from people as well.
Definitely. Yeah. It's so interesting. Yeah, I had a very similar thing.
Yeah.
But, we like very nearly broke up, and then my stepmom died, and we were having all these sort of fraught discussions about whether we should break up, my ex and I. And I think, you know, I was in a place of wanting that sort of comfort of just what was known. And so I was like, no, we can't break up. And it was me that like really pushed, no, we mustn't. we can make this work.
Yeah.
And it was just purely out of fear. And then, it's that staying longer than you should. And I think there are natural reasons for that. But
yeah,
you can look back and sort of pinpoint those little...
Right? It's all so clear now. But I think as well, one of those things that what we're learning about bereavement and going through that process was that thing where when you are losing things that you can't control the death of people. You cannot control mortality. So then when that is gone, or when those people are gone, then you want to control things, you want to work on the things you can control. And so then that relationship became something I was like, okay, well, I can hold on to this because I can actively take part in making this thing that isn't working work. And it became that kind of thing. Again, I wish I could go back and tell myself that, no, it's all right, hon. It's fine. You'll be all right.
Yeah. Is that trying so hard to make something work?
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of energy.
So much energy. Obviously, we don't want to talk about things that we regret because we can't go back and we can't change time. But what would you say maybe the biggest mistake, maybe a hard word, but mistake you made during that breakup process that you kind of maybe wish you could slightly undo or alter?
I really wish that I'd just taken a minute for myself and figured out sooner how to be alone. Yeah. It took me ages of, a lot of bad dating and just like frantic trying to make everything into something that then I really thought, right, I'm going to get therapy and I am going to learn to love being on my own. Yeah. And that took some doing, I think, because I was so unused to it. And at first it wasn't really something I'd chosen. And then I really reached a point where, I loved being alone. Yeah. And I wish that I'd have got to that sooner. I think I could have if I'd have not been so frantic about a load of other stuff. But I think I got to where I needed to be. It just took me longer than maybe in retrospect it could have.
Yeah. And what did you say? You talk about dating. What was dating like then after then? And what kind of do you look back now and kind of understand your motivations for throwing yourself into dating?
Yeah, definitely. It was a very it was like a panic, really. And I think when you've been in a relationship for ages, you do forget what it's like. And
it's weird dating.
Yeah, you become quite naive, I think. That when you're used to just someone that, likes having you around and, you feel quite comfortable, you forget that that's actually quite rare and in some ways quite difficult to get, that it doesn't just come along all the time. So I'd go on Tinder and someone would send me an interesting message and I think, oh, this is great, I'll probably marry him. And I just thought it was that easy.
Yeah.
And then it was a really nasty shock actually when it wasn't.
To finally meet the men of the world and be like, oh my God.
Exactly. Oh, this is awful.
At times just hellish. Hellish. Remember actually ringing up my sister one day and I'm like, because the guy that she's with now, I think that's kind of it for her. And I remember when they'd got together and she was like, okay, she was madly in love with him from literally, I think the moment she met him. And I said to her, I was like, never break up with him. Just stay with him forever. It's fine. You'll be fine. Just stay with him forever. Don't start dating. And
that's what I advise everyone now. I've got so many friends who are sometimes like, my partner's great, but maybe there's something else out for me. I'm a bit bored. No, stick with it.
No. I was like, and if you're going to be single, please be single before a certain time, before a certain age, because it just gets worse after a while.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It's the worst age for it.
It really is. It really is. It's like, oh man, can I just start lying about my age on things so I can cut through some of the rubbish?
Yeah, it's like, I mean, I'm 39 now, and it's like all the men my age, they've got their profile set, so it's I don't know, 25 to 32.
Yes.
What the hell?
Which is wild, because then we both look younger than we are. So if we were out, they would speak to us and not know we were 39. And it wouldn't matter to them. But because but the way they've said it on there, because I have genuinely been out and seen someone. I saw someone on my friend's dating profile, on when she was swiping, and she's younger than me. And I saw him on there. And I was like, I didn't see him on mine. We were in the same area or whatever. And I was like, he's quite cute, but he obviously doesn't want to go out with someone my age, so whatever. And I went out and he hit on me. And I was like, well, I've seen you before. But apparently I'm too old, hun. So...
That is wild.
I was just like, they don't. I don't know. It is what it is. Personal preference, I guess. But so I had like some amazing friends that helped me through everything that was going on. They were great. So things like, because of all the different bereavements and everything else, it was like a hella stressful, really stressful roller coaster time, because every time I thought something was all right, then someone else would die, which, you know, very inconvenient when you're trying to work. But it was crazy. So my friends were brilliant at things like coming round, getting me out of the house, just like also really good frank advice. Like my friend Pam, who is the most straightforward human being in the world. Everyone needs a Pam. And my friend Alison, they're both really straightforward. And Pam was always like, I look forward to the day when none of this matters anymore and you feel great. And she never told me to repress anything, never told me to push anything down, never belittled anything. She was just always like, I look forward to the day when you'll just be like, yeah, this man was trash and it's fine and I'm okay without him. And like, everyone needs a Pam and an Alison. Who were your Pam and Alisons?
Well, I definitely had some of those. And that's such a cool way of looking at it. Like, I look forward to the day when this doesn't matter. I love that. It's like not dismissing it, but at some point there is a light at the end of the tunnel. At some point this will cease to matter. That is awesome. But yeah, similar to you, just having really good friends is such a help. And and I remember like thinking at some points like, oh, you know, maybe I should just go off and go traveling or move house or something. And the only thing that really like kept me in one place was that I've got some just like really wonderful like local girlfriends who can, you know, I can just have that really casual like dropping in or just go for a walk and go for a coffee. And like my friend Catherine lives like 2 minutes from where I live.
Amazing.
And most days we just like go for a little walk together around the park. And she's really cool because she is the most self-contained, like independent, great person. And so she doesn't like to go on about all of this sort of stuff. I think like some friends love the drama and like relationship talk all the time. And like, you know, and she and some of my more sensible friends where it's just like, talking about boys is so boring. Like, what are you reading at the moment? What should we go and see at the cinema? Like, I really like that. It's like, I think I'm someone that gets very consumed with relationship stuff. And so having friends that don't care as much is really awesome.
Yeah, definitely. It provides like a real balance. And it's like, that's a good point. People that aren't kind of down with, I don't really have very many friends that I would say are dramatic in that sense of the word, or would even like that. If anything, we talk about so many different things that nothing is to do with our relationships necessarily. Like you were saying, it's just everything else in the world that we
so
talk
much
about.
More.
Yeah, exactly. That's just like a byproduct of whatever our lives are, of anything else. But so I know I said, you know, we don't want to go back and we can't go back and we can't change anything. But there were definitely times where I was really reflecting a lot on what had happened, self-reflecting. And my therapist had said, you know, well, okay, let's explore this. What would you change? What would you make that's different? Like, what would you have done? And what do you think the outcome would have been? So I'm going to ask you, what is something that you would change if you could go back in time about that situation?
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because there is this part of me that thinks, like, I would love to go back and do everything differently and, like, have a do-over with the confidence of someone in their late 30s.
Yeah.
Who, like, when I was in my early 20s, you know, my only criteria for a partner was, like, doesn't mind me hanging around, you know? So I would really love to be able to go back and see what a parallel universe would look like if I'd been single for longer or, you know, just had higher standards. But but then I do have that, I'm never sure how I feel about it because I've got that sort of Zen attitude now of like, actually, I probably have ended up in the same place. I really like my life. I've got really lovely friends. I've got a really nice new boyfriend now. Yeah. And like, I honestly think everything's worked out great. And I think I do notice the difference with people who have had that real heartbreak and grief have empathy in a way that I'm not sure you can if you haven't been through some things yourself. And that's not like, oh, you know, it makes you a better person. But I do think it gives you a perspective on things which I find really valuable in a lot of other relationships. And so it's a bit boring that actually I don't know if I would change anything. Yeah. Even though sometimes I do think, I would love to do everything differently.
I get that. That's a really good point as well. Like, I think that it does give you, there is, I don't know, there's something you see, there's something that's calmer within you, or there's just something, it's like a switch has been flicked, hasn't it? And you're just like, okay, I'm just seeing things a little bit differently now. And you can see it in other people as well. And I think my little sister made a really good point. Well, one of my sisters, there were so many, but she actually said, oh, I didn't even realize how much you loved him until you were broken up. And I didn't even get it until I fell in love. And so she didn't get it until she loved her current so much. She was like, yeah, I just couldn't imagine it. I'd be in pieces. And so then that was also the thing that made her, because before she was very cut and dry about it because she's a lot younger. And so she had a really specific way of seeing it. And then as soon as that, I suppose her heart was more open, all of a sudden she could see kind of how devastating it was and understand that a little bit more.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. And that really, and she only said that to me, I'd say maybe about 6 months ago. And yeah, me and my ex split up years ago now, and she just kind of came out with it. And I was like, what? Really? I had no idea that she didn't get it until she said that. What would you say to yourself if you could go back in time and have a word with yourself at the very moment that you became single?
Oh, I think I would just say, calm down. When I look back on myself then, I can just see this kind of frantic, panicking person. And I think due to the point at which it happened as well, I really felt like, right, I am on the clock. I have got to meet someone else in the next year, then probably get engaged. I want to be pregnant in 3 years' time. Yes. And I'd just say, like, don't worry about any of that. Like, just don't even think about it. That can go out the window. Just calm down and just, have a nice sit down and a think, because you have been through something. Yeah.
And also, you know, you're processing bereavement, you're processing everything else, the changing dynamics of your family. It would have been good to say to you, okay, Eleanor, it's a shit day, but let's just take a deep breath. Just have a cup of tea, have a little nap, have a little think about it. Yeah. It's like, eat some pasta in your pants out of a pot. It's fine.
Yeah, embrace it.
Exactly. So what did you learn about, like, kind of how you handle conflict and difficult situations? What did you learn about that from that breakdown of the relationship?
Well, I think I learned that I do not handle it well at all.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel like a completely different person now, really. I think that experience has changed me so much. And it's only looking back that I would look back at myself and think, oh my goodness, what a little baby. And I just didn't deal well with it at all. All I did was just avoid. And I think there's still, you know, I don't think there's a lot of value in, like, my ex and I having all these conversations now. But when I look back on it, I think there are so many conversations we didn't even have at the time. And I think I found that difficult because there was a lot that felt very unfinished.
Yes.
And a lot of that was completely my own fault, because I was very conflict averse. I was very keen to please, and so never wanted to say anything difficult. And I think it's a bit of a shame, but I feel like I've learned some real lessons from that. Yeah. And I'm still not great at it. I'm still working on it, but at least I can be a little bit more honest about my feelings and needs at this point. Yeah.
Well, I suppose it shows you what it is that you do need when you're in these situations where your needs aren't being met when they end. All of a sudden you're like, oh, I need all these things and I just didn't realise. I just kind of passively, like, kind of soldiered on without and neglected my own care and everything else. It's really weird how long that can go on for, isn't it?
Exactly. And you know what it's like when you've been with someone a while, unless you really go out of your way to address these things, you could spend years and years just in, what shall we have for dinner, what shall we watch on Netflix, and that's it.
Yeah. I mean,
and you truly can tell yourself that's enough.
Yeah, truly, we could have had this conversation in 20 years because we would have just sailed along. Yeah. Which is really terrifying. More people need to have conversations with themselves about what it is they really, really want and need, almost like separately from their relationship. Even if they're in one and it's happy, I think every now and again, it doesn't hurt to have a little audit.
Yes. Yeah. Such a good idea.
Yeah, definitely. So I know you said you wrote your book because at the time there was the material and resources weren't necessarily there. for you to help you process it. But was there anything that, even though that particular story wasn't being told, were there any other resources, books, podcasts, or Instagram accounts or anything that were helping you through?
There was a lot that I think I was really searching for things to read, and just anything that I could relate to. There are some really brilliant ones. There's a book called Your Voice in My Head by Emma Forrest. I don't know if you know her. I think she is the greatest living writer. She's wonderful. She writes beautifully and just so honestly about her feelings. And she had a similar thing, that she was in a long-term relationship and then was basically ghosted by this guy, and writes about that and also the therapy that she had as well. And that book was probably my biggest inspiration. And also Heartburn by Nora Ephron, who wrote about when she found out her husband was cheating on her when she was 7 months pregnant with their second child, and managed to write a comedy novel about it, and it's wonderful. I recommend that.
What? I have not heard of this book. I don't, oh my gosh, how the hell does she, I suppose you have to laugh.
Yeah, that's what she says.
Laugh? Yeah. My God, I could not find the funniness in that situation.
Exactly. And I think she set out writing it like, I must find something funny about this.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful book. It's a really short book. It's look it up. It's really cool.
Oh my gosh, definitely. Oh my God. Like, even as you said that, I was like, oh my God, my heart was going. Just like her just describing that situation. Because obviously it's a really common situation where people get cheated on when they're pregnant and stuff. I know that's happened to a lot of people I know. And that is, that's a hideous situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my
Awful.
Goodness me. Wow.
So,
well, there you go. Read that book then.
Yeah,
anyone that's going through that. My goodness.
Those two.
So obviously, you've had therapy, which everyone should be in therapy anyway, just because therapy is dope. How did you feel about yourself when things were difficult? How did you feel about yourself at the end of that relationship? And how did you feel about yourself when you got to that point where you're like, okay, I need help. I need to sort something out now. Yeah. What were the voices inside your head saying?
I think when I was really in the midst of it, I just didn't think about myself at all. And I think I hadn't thought about my identity at that time and what it was and what I wanted it to be. And I don't think I'd realised that when you're in a really long-term relationship like that, it's really difficult to adjust to not being. And I didn't really want to admit that, because no one likes to think that they're in a sort of codependent relationship. And we always had a relationship where it was like, oh, we're really cool, we're not living in each other's pockets. I'd, go out loads and go on holidays with my friends. And so I convinced myself that that means I'll be fine in the outside world. And it was a really big adjustment that I didn't want to admit. And so that definitely took some doing. And having been in a relationship so long, it took me a while just to think oh, who am I at this point? I've changed a lot since the last time I was single. And I had to give that an awful lot of thought, I think. And I think I just didn't have a very strong sense of self when things were really bad. I was just going from one thing to another. There were a lot of external influences that I was more focused on, dating and going out a lot. And so having to do a little bit of self-reflection, I think, was really helpful for me. And I think kind of confronting who I was and my part in things. I made some mistakes and didn't always behave brilliantly, but, I really try my best and I've got some great qualities. And I feel like I could be quite honest about how I feel about myself then at that point.
Love it. And was there a point where... Because there was a day when I remember there was a day I woke up one day and it didn't matter anymore. That was just I woke up and I was like, I don't know, I just didn't think about it. And I got through the day and I was like, this is the first day in ages that I was like, oh wow, I'm over it. I don't give a shit anymore. This is awesome. And I remember feeling really pumped like that. At the end of the day, I was like, yeah. Did that happen to you that abruptly, or was it more of a gradual process?
Yeah, I remember reaching a point where I thought I love being on my own. I am having a really nice time. I can do whatever I want. And even just being on my own in bed, having a coffee in the morning, listening to Radio 4. really cool.
Yeah.
But then I thought, like, this is lovely. Like, I don't wish that my ex was here. I don't wish that some like mythical person that I thought was going to come and save me was here. And yeah, I remember around that time I decided just to stay in on my own on New Year's Eve, and like did a bit of writing. I think I watched a documentary, like made myself a really nice dinner, went to bed just after midnight, and I thought, this is a really nice life. And I think I had to get to that point where it's like, if this is my life forever, then this is a great life. I think when I wasn't feeling good about being single, I really wanted it to be that this was a temporary thing where I would look back and laugh when, you know, I was in my perfect house with my perfect husband with 2 children, and he happens to be a millionaire and I don't work anymore or something. I don't know, like it was this very like far-flung fantasy of like, oh, one day I'll look back on this as the bad time. But then not much changed externally, but just within myself. But then I thought, actually, yeah, if this is my life forever, that's great.
Yeah. That's lovely. I think that's so positive, because you said about New Year's, there was a point where, so me and my friend, because she was going through a divorce, both of us just spent New Year's together in my house, just having some drinks, ended up getting drunk, doing some karaoke, and it was just really fun. And it was just the 2 of us together, like when we were 18, and like what we'd done countless weekends when I used to go to my hometown and I would go and stay with her for the weekend. And it was just, we were just like, we're cool. She just bought a house. We both have our own places. We love where we live. We really liked our jobs. And we were just like, this is all right. It's okay if we're by ourselves. And it's okay if it's just us. Like, it's okay if I've just got my mates and I'm having a good time. And like you're saying, it's that kind of really recognizing what you've got and how awesome it is. And that you don't necessarily, anyone else that's there is a bonus, essentially. It's just gravy. It's not like the main components of the meal, is it?
Definitely. Yeah, that's so cool.
I think one of the main things and I don't know if you've got this from any of your parents, my dad and my stepdad are like so good with advice. Between them, they are one incredibly wise man. And they're both fairly young, so I'm not going to say they're old, but they both gave me, like, my Italian dad, it's my stepdad, he is just really frank and straightforward, and he'll just say things. And then my other dad is very like kind of whimsical dad, but he always has like loads of metaphors of things. But I think they were both brilliant, and they constantly always giving me these kind of like really good bits of advice and sayings. And one of the things they both said, but in different ways, was just pay attention to how someone makes you feel after they're gone, when you're not with them. And they both said there were so many times that when you weren't with your ex, or when you weren't doing XYZ, you would tell me how you were feeling, or you would show me how you're feeling, and it wasn't great. And you have to start listening to that. It shouldn't be for me to ask you. You need to ask yourself. And I think that's one of the things as well that made me think, actually, yeah, now I feel better, because I don't have to think, well, now that person's gone or they're not here. You don't have to recalibrate how you feel or kind of reflect on it, do you?
That's so good. Yeah. It's something that I've thought about quite a lot as well, that I've talked about in therapy. That, yeah, there is, I think, tuning into how you feel around different people is really powerful. It's like even like some friends where you'll go out and the next morning you'll feel really rubbish. And when you have those kind of dread hangovers where you're like, oh God, you know, but then if it's really nice friends, like you and your mate doing karaoke and having a lovely time, even if you're really tired and hungover the next day, you feel wonderful. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think you pointed out as well that whole thing where being single at a certain age, and then all of a sudden you start to feel all these pressures, like you were saying, you're hoping, like you hit the nail on the head there so hard. Thinking that you'll look back on this and laugh when you're barefoot, pregnant in a barn, with your topless husband. I don't know, birthing a horse in the corner or something. you know, in this kind of whimsical cottage kind of thing. You look at it like, oh, this is the situation that's going to take me out of that, and then I'll be like, ha ha ha, look at my husband looks like Chris Evans. But really, it's just about finding the whimsical cottage in you.
Yes.
Instead.
Let's all be a whimsical cottage.
Exactly. Like on Friends, that. Be your own wind. Be your own whimsical cottage. That's all we need. We should co-author a book. about being your own whimsical
cottage. Seriously.
Exactly. Definitely. Someone publish us. So what has this experience taught you about yourself, and what are the best things that have come out of it?
I feel like a completely different person now in the best possible way. And I think just learning to be on my own and check in with myself, and as much as anything, actually, all the other relationships in my life as well, I feel like everything's just worked out how it should have. And I think I've got deeper relationships with some of my girlfriends than I would have if all of this hadn't happened. And I know myself a lot better. And I think it makes you feel like you can get through anything when you're sort of at the other side of things. That sometimes when everything feels so awful, it feels like it's going to be endless. And it doesn't actually take a lot. Yeah, you don't need the actual whimsical cottage and the perfect setup, but just, learning to feel okay within yourself really shifts things, and it is possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So what top tips would you give someone going through a breakup right now? So let's say it's just happened. It's just happened. What would you say to them?
Find a really good therapist. That's the first one. It's therapy. I think talk to your friends. Find people that you can be really honest with and that you don't have to pretend it's okay. And I think when you sort of drop that mask as well, you realise that everyone feels the same. That everyone's failed, in inverted commas, at something, and admitting it is okay. And I think just be really, really kind to yourself. Don't think that you have to be over it in a minute. Wallow for a bit if you need to. And just take the time to figure out how you really feel and what you really want.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think one thing I would add to that, for one thing that I think I was talking to one of my friends about this the other day, that I think they felt a lot of pressure to kind of be the bigger person, in the sense of, it's okay this happened, it's fine, I understand why it's happened, I wish him no ill will, I'm happy for him, we'll just move on, blah blah. You don't have to do that. You don't have to like them. You don't have to be their friend. I think the more you kind of do that, the more you just end up turning that into repressed anger. You just have to feel it and go with it, and it's okay to just dislike them. Because I think, the more you kind of pretend it's all okay, the worse it kind of can end up feeling in the long run. It all kind of ends up bubbling out, doesn't it?
Definitely, yeah. I second that.
Yeah. And lastly, what tips would you give to people helping friends through a breakup?
Oh, that's a really good one, because I think a lot of really well-meaning people can sometimes say things that make you feel a lot worse.
Yeah.
And everyone's got really good intentions, but I think just being there for someone and being non-judgmental and all of those things, but also I think being realistic. That I had a lot of friends who were married or in long-term relationships still, where there'd be very much like, oh, don't worry, I know that it'll work out okay for you. Well, we don't know what that looks like. And I think, people can, with very good intentions, sometimes be a bit patronizing. And let's just be realistic. I think it's okay just to say, this is shit.
Yes.
I think maybe that's the most useful thing you can say. Like, don't come out with platitudes to try and make someone feel better, because it's not going to help. It's rubbish.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just really shit, and it doesn't feel great. And I'm sorry that you feel like this. It's going to feel like this for a hot minute. It's crappy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm going to steal what your friend did as well.
Oh, yeah.
I look forward to
I look forward to, and she had a few of them. I look forward to the day that this date doesn't matter. I look forward to the day that you feel better. I look forward to the day when this whole thing doesn't matter. I look forward to the day when we just never have to mention his name again, and because it won't matter to you, and it won't feature in your life. And also, one of the ones was, I look forward to the day where you can talk about this in a healthy way, and it's not hurting you. So that's the wise words of Pam.
Pam sounds great. I am gonna use those.
I mean, she's all right. I'm not gonna lie. I keep a picture so no one can see this on the podcast, but I'm just gonna show Eleanor. I've got a picture that I keep in my house that's dedicated to Pam. That says Pam is a bellend, which actually is just code for me saying I love Pam. But I like to keep that in my house so she sees it every time she comes around.
That is perfect.
I don't want her to get too big a head. But no, thank you so much for joining me, Eleanor.
Thank you.
Can you tell us where we can get hold of Staunch, what else we can find out about it, and where we can find you online?
Staunch is available in all the usual places. If you can, the most useful thing you can do is buy independent and then leave a review on Amazon. It's out in hardback at the moment. It's out in paperback in June. It's available as an audiobook as well on Audible and all of those things. And I'm on all the socials. I think I'm Eleanor Claire Wood on Instagram. I think I'm Eleanor_Wood on Twitter. But look me up. I'm around.
Brilliant. Thank you so much and have an amazing day.
Thank you. This has been so fun.
It has. It's been a good laugh, hasn't it?
It's been great talking to you. I feel like it's been quite cathartic. We've both been through some stuff.
We really have. Yeah, join in, tune in again for us to just sit down and talk about all the things we've been through. We'll be here for days. Thank you for listening to Speak On. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share with your friends, family, co-workers, strangers in the street. To find out more about us, including our upcoming events, head over to Instagram, instagram.com/speakon_. Bye!